The most powerful medicine on Earth isn't locked behind a pharmacy counter. It isn't synthesized in a sterile laboratory by scientists in white coats. It isn't packaged in blister packs or sold for hundreds of dollars per bottle. The most powerful medicine on Earth is quietly bubbling in a jar on kitchen shelves around the world, performing biochemistry so sophisticated that modern pharmaceutical science still struggles to replicate it. While pharmaceutical companies race to patent the next billion-dollar drug, a parallel universe of healing has been hiding in plain sight for thousands of years. Foods so alive, so biochemically active, so cellularly potent that they make most modern supplements look like expensive placebos, dressed up in fancy marketing. Here's what modern medicine won't acknowledge. Humanity has been sterilizing itself into sickness. For the past century, an all-out war on bacteria has been waged across every developed nation. The food supply has been pasteurized, irradiated, homogenized, and processed into sterile submission. Shelves are stocked with products engineered for shelf life, not human life. The result of this century-long experiment is now undeniable. An epidemic of gut dysfunction, skyrocketing autoimmune disease, metabolic collapse on a generational scale, anxiety, depression, and chronic fatigue at rates never before recorded in human history. Ancient cultures understood something profound that modern civilization forgot. They didn't fight bacteria. They cultivated it. They fermented it. They built entire civilizations on it. From the kimchi crocs of Korea to the kefir grains of the Caucasus Mountains, from the miso vats of Japan to the sauerkraut barrels of Germany, fermented foods were never optional. They were foundational. Cutting-edge science is finally catching up to what Korean grandmothers and Japanese monks knew all along. The GUT is the motherboard of human health. It's where 70% of the immune system lives. It's where 90% of serotonin gets produced. It's where vitamins are synthesized, hormones get regulated, and inflammation either ignites or extinguishes. Fix the microbiome, and everything changes. Not just digestion. The immune system rewires itself. Brain chemistry reboots. Skin clears. Energy returns. Lifespan extends. Today's exploration goes deep into uncharted territory. Yogurt won't be discussed. Basic sauerkraut gets no mention. This is about the forgotten ferments, the medicinal outliers, the strange and wonderful living foods that traditional cultures used to survive plagues, famines, and brutal winters without a single antibiotic, without a single vaccine, without a single pharmaceutical intervention. 7 living foods, ancient wisdom, modern proof. For those ready to challenge everything conventional nutrition teaches, subscription to BotanicalBounty is essential. This is where ancestral wisdom collides with hardcore science. The journey begins now. Number 7. Natto. The ancient cardiovascular armor the West ignored. The visual is unmistakable. Sticky, pungent, covered in what looks like spiderweb slime stretching between chopsticks. Most Westerners take one look at natto and flee in horror. Massive mistake. Inside this funky Japanese breakfast staple lives a compound so medically potent that pharmaceutical companies have been trying, and consistently failing, to synthesize it for decades. Nattokinase. This enzyme, produced exclusively by Bacillus subtilis bacteria during fermentation, doesn't just thin blood. It actively dissolves blood clots that have already formed. It functions through the same biological pathways that modern cardiovascular medicine targets to prevent strokes and heart attacks. And this version is delivered entirely through whole living soybeans, fermented in a wooden box. Clinical studies demonstrate that nattokinase reduces blood viscosity, prevents dangerous clotting cascades, and literally breaks down fibrin, the protein nets that trap red blood cells and trigger cardiovascular catastrophe. Researchers comparing nattokinase to pharmaceutical blood thinners have noted something remarkable. The enzyme works systemically without the dangerous bleeding side effects that plague drugs like warfarin. The story gets wilder. Natto also contains the highest concentration of vitamin K2 in the highly bioavailable MK7 form of any food on the planet. A single serving delivers over 300 micrograms, vastly exceeding standard daily recommendations. This is not just a vitamin. K2 functions as the biological traffic director for calcium, redirecting it out of arteries where it causes deadly arterial plaque and into bones where it prevents osteoporotic fractures. Consider the implications carefully. One food: cardiovascular protection, bone density preservation, blood flow optimization, stroke prevention. This explains why Japanese populations, particularly those in regions with high natto consumption, maintain some of the lowest rates of heart disease, osteoporosis, and arterial calcification on Earth. The source of this medical miracle is a bowl of sticky fermented beans that most of the Western world refuses to touch. Number 6. Beet kvass, Eastern Europe's blood-purifying secret. While the West guzzled Coca-Cola and chased convenience, Eastern Europeans drank something far more powerful, something whispered about in family kitchens across Russia, Ukraine, and Poland for centuries: beet kvass. This deep crimson tonic resembles liquid earth poured into a glass. The taste evokes forest floor after rain, mineral-rich and slightly briny. For centuries, it served as a folk remedy for liver disease, poor circulation, sluggish digestion, and the chronic fatigue that comes with harsh winters and harder lives. The science validates every traditional claim. When raw beets undergo lactofermentation in salted water, betalains become dramatically concentrated. These blood-red pigments carry off-the-charts antioxidant power, demonstrating measurable anti-inflammatory effects in clinical research. Simultaneously, the natural nitrates abundant in beets convert into a form the human body can immediately use to produce nitric oxide. Nitric oxide equals vascular gold. Blood vessel walls relax and widen. Blood pressure drops measurably. Muscles flood with oxygen-rich blood. Athletes drinking beet kvass report dramatically better endurance, faster recovery times, and significantly delayed muscle fatigue. Hypertensive patients in randomized controlled trials experience blood pressure reductions, comparable to pharmaceutical ACE inhibitors, without the dry cough, dizziness, or kidney stress those medications often cause. The liver benefits are equally extraordinary. Beet kvass supports phase 2 detoxification pathways, helping the liver process and eliminate environmental toxins, hormones, and metabolic waste. The natural betaine content protects liver cells from damage and supports healthy bile production. Russian grandmothers weren't crafting folklore over kitchen tables. They were brewing pharmaceutical-grade cellular medicine in clay crocks. Number 5. Fermented garlic in raw honey, the antibiotic that tastes like candy. The concept sounds almost too simple to be revolutionary. Combine the two most antimicrobial foods on Earth. Let them age together in a dark cupboard for months on end. The result is edible alchemy. Raw garlic contains allicin, a powerful sulfur compound that obliterates bacteria, viruses, fungi, and parasites with terrifying efficiency. The frustrating limitation? Allicin is notoriously unstable. Degradation begins within hours of crushing the clove, dramatically diminishing its medicinal potential. When whole garlic cloves submerge in raw, unpasteurized honey, transformation begins. Enzymes naturally present in the honey stabilize the allicin compounds. Wild yeasts living on the garlic skin and in the honey initiate slow, gentle fermentation. Over weeks and months, the garlic mellows from sharp aggression into a sweet, savory, spreadable softness. The honey transforms, taking on garlic's medicinal essence while contributing its own antibacterial enzymes, including hydrogen peroxide and methylglyoxal. The outcome? A spreadable, sweet, savory immune bomb proven in clinical research to reduce the frequency of upper respiratory infections, lower LDL cholesterol levels, prevent dangerous platelet aggregation that leads to clots, and create an internal biological environment so hostile to pathogens that historical herbalists relied on it to survive brutal winters. In laboratory studies, the active compounds in raw honey and garlic continually demonstrate an ability to neutralize aggressive bacterial strains. Combined with fermented garlic, the antimicrobial spectrum becomes extraordinary. Medieval European herbalists stored jars of this preparation in stone cellars throughout long winters. The name they gave it was poor man's penicillin. They used it for everything from sore throats to infected wounds, from stomach troubles to chronic coughs. No exaggeration was involved in their claims. Modern science has validated nearly every traditional use. Number 4. Fermented herbal tonics, when ancient medicine comes alive. Master herbalists across every continent have known this for millennia. How a plant is prepared matters as much as which plant is chosen. Two preparations of the same herb can yield radically different therapeutic effects. Turmeric can be dried into powder. It can be encapsulated. Capsules can be swallowed by the dozens until fingers turn faintly yellow. Or it can be fermented, and everything changes. When medicinal herbs undergo lactofermentation, including turmeric, ginger, astragalus, elderberry, ashwagandha, and dozens of others, beneficial bacteria essentially predigest the plant's tough cellular structures. Rigid polyphenols break down into smaller, instantly absorbable molecules. Entirely new, bioactive compounds emerge that did not exist in the raw plant material at all. The bacteria themselves contribute additional metabolites, creating a synergistic medicinal cocktail far greater than the sum of its parts. Take curcumin, the celebrated anti-inflammatory compound in turmeric. Absorption is famously, frustratingly difficult. The human gut is not designed to break it down efficiently. Most curcumin consumed in capsule form passes through the digestive tract completely unused, eliminated as expensive yellow waste. Unless fermentation occurs, first. Fermented turmeric kvass delivers curcumin alongside billions of probiotic organisms that prep the intestinal lining for optimal absorption. Bioavailability skyrockets by orders of magnitude. Inflammation plummets throughout the body. Joint pain eases. Brain fog lifts. Skin clears. This explains why Ayurvedic and traditional Chinese medicine practitioners have always fermented their most potent herbs. The practice was not traditional sentimentality or cultural quirk. It was sophisticated biochemical brilliance passed down across generations of careful observation. Number 3. True cultured buttermilk, the digestive drink most have never tasted. Everything commonly known about buttermilk requires immediate, complete correction. That thick, sour, white liquid sitting in grocery store dairy cases? That product is not buttermilk in any traditional sense. It is an acidified milk product, pasteurized dairy that has been chemically soured with lab-created lactic acid for use in baking. It contains 0 living cultures and 0 medicinal properties. Real cultured buttermilk is something else entirely. Thin, effervescent, tangy, alive with billions of beneficial organisms. It is the naturally fermented liquid remaining after churning cultured cream into butter, a probiotic-rich elixir that traditional cultures from Scandinavia to Ireland to South India consumed daily as the ultimate digestive tonic. It was given to nursing mothers, weakened elders, recovering patients, and weaning infants. The scientific reasoning is sound and increasingly well documented. Real buttermilk contains sphingomyelin, a unique phospholipid that actively repairs intestinal lining damage and shows promising research as protection against colorectal cancer. Lactic acid bacteria boost digestive enzyme secretion, eliminate pathogenic microorganisms, and create an environment hostile to harmful bacteria like E. coli and Salmonella. Fat content remains naturally low, but bioavailable calcium, B vitamins, and probiotic compounds become abundantly available. In Ayurvedic medicine, spiced buttermilk known as chas has served as the prescribed post-meal digestive ritual for thousands of years across the Indian subcontinent. Traditional preparation involves blending cultured buttermilk with water, roasted cumin, fresh coriander, ginger, and black salt. The purpose was never about flavor preference. The purpose was always pharmaceutical function. The digestive fire gets stoked. Nutrient absorption accelerates. Bloating disappears. Gut inflammation calms. Number 2. Fermented hot sauce. Metabolic fire in a bottle. Hot sauce is not merely a flavor enhancement, despite what culinary culture suggests. That classification is dramatically incomplete. Lacto-fermented hot sauce, made by fermenting fresh chili peppers in salt brine over weeks rather than drowning them in distilled vinegar, operates as a precision metabolic weapon, delivering measurable physiological effects. Capsaicin, the compound responsible for chili heat, binds to specific receptors throughout the gut lining and triggers a cascade of beneficial responses. Thermogenesis increases substantially, meaning the body burns calories at accelerated rates for hours after consumption. Appetite suppression occurs through hormonal signaling. Digestive enzyme release intensifies dramatically. Helicobacter pylori, the bacteria responsible for most stomach ulcers, is reduced through direct antimicrobial action. Add billions of lactobacillus organisms generated through fermentation, and the result is a condiment that simultaneously functions as an anti-inflammatory agent, an antimicrobial shield, a metabolic accelerator, a probiotic delivery system, and a cardiovascular protector. Research demonstrates that regular capsaicin consumption correlates with reduced mortality from cardiovascular disease and cancer. The compound triggers autophagy, the cellular cleanup process where damaged proteins and organelles get recycled. It activates brown adipose tissue, the metabolically active fat that burns calories to generate heat. Traditional Mexican, Korean, Thai, and West African cuisines did not ferment peppers for pleasure or by accident. Every culture that survived in tropical climates, where food spoilage and parasitic infection posed constant threats, developed sophisticated, fermented pepper preparations. They fermented for survival, for medicine, for protection against the pathogens that threatened their populations. Number 1. Wild fermented fruit. Humanity's first medicine. This is where the entire story of fermentation truly originated, long before human civilization. Before people ever fermented anything intentionally, before clay pots existed, before agriculture began, fruit fermented itself spontaneously. Ripe fruit falling from trees, naturally coated in wild yeasts and beneficial bacteria, began transforming the moment it touched the warm earth. Our evolutionary ancestors did not consume perfect fruit picked at peak ripeness from supermarket displays. They consumed wild, partially fermented fruit found on forest floors. Bacteria had partially consumed the sugars, dramatically lowering glycemic impact. Enzymes became hyperactive, predigesting cellular structures. Antioxidants concentrated as water content decreased. Microbial communities thrived on every bite, seeding the human gut with diverse beneficial organisms. From fermented mangoes in South Asia to preserved plums across the Middle East, from fermented citrus in Mediterranean cultures to fermented berries in Northern Europe, every traditional culture developed sophisticated versions of this primordial practice. The reason becomes clear under scientific scrutiny. Fermentation converts fruit from a concentrated sugar bomb into a true digestive aid, an antioxidant powerhouse, and a probiotic delivery vehicle. Anthocyanin bioavailability multiplies. Polyphenol content concentrates. Natural enzymes that facilitate human digestion get produced in abundance. Clinical studies comparing fresh fruit to fermented fruit reveal dramatic differences. Fermented fruit produces significantly lower blood sugar spikes. Antioxidant activity measures substantially higher. The presence of beneficial bacteria creates postbiotic compounds, including short-chain fatty acids, that feed the gut lining and reduce systemic inflammation. This classification transcends food entirely. This is humanity's original medicine, predating every pharmaceutical by millions of years. Evolution shaped human digestive systems around the expectation of consuming living, fermented plant matter, not sterile, processed products. The truth medical schools don't teach. 7 ferments. Thousands of years of accumulated human survival wisdom. Modern biochemistry now provides rigorous scientific validation. Ancient cultures lacked double-blind clinical trials, electron microscopes, and peer-reviewed journals. What they possessed instead were generations of careful observation, intergenerational intuition, and undeniable, measurable results lived out across thousands of years of survival. Living food creates living health. The modern world attempted complete bacterial elimination through industrial processing. Sterilization became routine. Pasteurization became mandatory. Processing dominated every supermarket aisle. The underlying belief was simple. Bacteria equals danger. Shelf stability equals safety. Convenience equals progress. Population health collapsed in response. Rates of autoimmune disease have increased by over 300% in the last 50 years. Obesity, type 2 diabetes, and metabolic syndrome affect the majority of adults in developed nations. Mental health crises intensify with each generation. Chronic inflammation drives nearly every disease of modern civilization. But ancestral knowledge is not lost forever. It is merely buried under decades of marketing campaigns, manufactured convenience, and corporate profit motives. These foods still exist in the world. Accessibility remains entirely possible. The life force within them still endures, waiting to be reclaimed. The critical distinction must be understood clearly. A vinegar-pickled cucumber bears absolutely no resemblance to genuine lacto-fermented sauerkraut. A pharmaceutical probiotic pill cannot replicate the complex living matrix of wild fermented fruit. One category represents true cellular medicine. The other represents a sterilized shadow wearing the same name. Health reclamation requires food reclamation. There is no shortcut, no pill, no synthetic substitute that can replace what living fermentation provides. The journey begins humbly with a jar, some salt, some water, some patience, some time, and the courage to trust what countless ancestors already proved through their own survival across millennia of human history. This is Botanical Bounty. Subscribe now. The fermentation revolution begins today.